Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2 on AM 560, The Answer.
Welcome back to Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on this post-election day, still election day.
Election week, probably.
Installment of our program. So what happened in Chicago and Cook County in the metropolitan area in the state of Illinois? Not to the bloodbath that it could have been, as per usual for Republicans, but I mean, the bar is so low that taking back one historically Republican seat is being hailed as a big victory. Shooting down a tax increase referendum just 3 years removed from a 32% increase in the state income tax is hailed as salvation. Those are positive developments, to be certain. But
and then Speaker Madigan, he got dealt a blow.
State Supreme Court Justice Kilbride, who is a wholly owned subsidiary of the trial lawyers, going down. So that's good news. And again, the thank you should be directed towards the Trump voters who did rallies in Illinois, sans Trump, who motivated people to get out to essentially lodge a protest vote for Trump in this state and keep Trump within 12 points of Biden in Illinois, which is a substantial improvement over his performance in 2016. And it allowed for less down ballot drag, which allowed for some Republicans, including in the suburbs, to escape who probably otherwise wouldn't had Trump lost by the same margin he did in 2016.
And you mentioned earlier there was even one ward in Chicago that voted for Trump.
Yes, the 41st Ward and a state Senate race. The human stain, Bob Martwick, who is one of the more disgusting human beings in public office in this state, and that's really saying something. He is in basically recount territory on the northwest side. I guess finally some of those firefighters and cops and public sector workers got the download on Bob Martwick. Thanks for waking up. And Anthony Beckman, a Chicago police officer, within 28 votes of Martwick in the city. So, I mean, to lodge a race like that a state Senate race that's that competitive in the city is really something. For more on the local races, we're pleased to be joined by Kristen McQueary. She is the Chicago Tribune editorial page editor. Kristen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry Kanye West didn't come in. I know that's who the Tribune endorsed for president, right? Do I remember that correctly?
Was he even on the ballot in Illinois?
No, he wasn't.
Does he need to be? Okay. Does he need to be supported? I mean, these, you can
write him in.
Yeah, these unyielding requirements you have. So give us, your take on state and local, the outcome and what the outcomes in the races we were mentioning, perhaps others, does or does not to change the environment in Illinois.
I mean, change is a strong word, as you know, but I do see signs of rebellion in a lot of the races that you talked about. And the fact that Republicans were able to turn out voters almost to the same extent that Democrats did. And you mentioned how, Biden and Hillary Clinton sort of did the same percentage-wise 4 years ago as this year for Illinois, but Trump did better. If you look at the U.S. Senate race, Mark Curran, the Republican, he lost to Dick Durbin, but he did a lot better than the Republican in 2016, Mark Kirk, against Tammy Duckworth. So I think you can see glimmers of a state that's more open to a two-party system. I don't think you can say that with Springfield. I'm not sure what the shakeout is, but Mike Madigan, of course, is going to maintain his supermajority. And you mentioned the Senate race with Martwick and Anthony Beckman. That is another sign of a growing GOP movement on the northwest side of Chicago in the suburbs that can't be ignored. Martwick is, very close to the speaker, and that sort of feels like an anti-Madigan vote. So I don't think it's all bad news. And, of course, the Pritzker tax, we spent a lot of time, resources, and ink. And, of course, more than $50 million from Ken Griffin doesn't hurt. But the fact that voters finally said no on something that was going to be a class warfare issue, which normally does really well, let's just ping, rich people, I think does show some glimmers of hope for the state.
But now, Governor Pritzker warned us many times, if we don't vote for this, there's going to be a 20% increase in our income tax. You think he'll follow through with that threat?
Well, I mean, it's really outrageous. And I would hope that voters, as engaged as they are on this issue, would not allow that to be the sucker punch for, doing the right thing. So I actually think they're more in a crouched position where are they going to put pension reform or something like that on the ballot? Probably not. But I think the appetite for sort of punishing voters and raising taxes, I don't think you're going to see that out of Springfield. I think he's in a bind now. It'll be federal bailout probably, and the issue will sort of maybe go away.
If Joe Biden is victorious, it'll be a federal bailout because it doesn't seem like there'll be significant federal funds available for states just because they're blue states if President Trump turns out to be the victor. Well,
that's true. We still don't know exactly what's going to happen with the U.S. Senate, but of course Mitch McConnell has been a voice of reason in also trying to block money to rescue states who are badly financially mismanaged. So it's still unknown, but I do think the idea that the governor and legislators would then turn around and kind of smack voters by just a universal income tax hike would be really outrageous, and I would hope to see voters rise up as they did with the amendment. What
do you see happening in the suburbs? Sean Casten wins re-election. You had milquetoast Republicans like Grant Worley apparently lose in Naperville, the Worley name in Naperville, and he's a milquetoast Republican. He's happy to surrender to Democrats and do their bidding. That wasn't enough for him to keep his seat in Naperville. Alan Skillicorn, a libertarian-type conservative up Kane County, McHenry County way, apparently lost his seat. And then there were some other gains in the suburbs by Republicans, too, sort of a net neutral. But what's your handle on the suburbs and how that impacts the ability for Illinois to reform itself?
Well, I was surprised by a number of those results, and also I thought Peter Breen might have a chance at winning back his seat in the suburbs, and he was unable to do so. So I don't know if voters are just, if this was another sort of midterm election sense anti-Trump, we're just going to try to vote out Republicans. But it doesn't make a lot of sense when you square it against the tax amendment, for example, where people are very engaged on their pocketbooks, and all of the candidates that you just mentioned, Worley, Skillicorn, they are fiscal conservatives. They're sometimes the only people standing on the floor of the House demanding balanced budgets. So I don't know if there's just a disconnect there, if this was another sort of blue wave, but some of those were surprising. And of course, Democrats are now going to be able to draw remap, and it will look even less likely that the suburbs will be able to offer up the more even moderate Republican options.
And it seems to me, too, some of these success stories are sort of very individually specific. I think of Dan Patlak in suburban Cook County on the Cook County Board of Review. I mean, you say, oh, well, Dan Patlak won. He was able to turn back the machine. No, not really. Dan Patlak won because Dan Patlak has built a brand for himself, and he, outworks everybody, and he's been doing it for a long time. So he's sort of an independent entity. It's not really reflective of so much a Republican vote or the state of the Republican Party or the state of the suburbs. It's just reflective of Dan Patlak. And I think people need to understand how you separate an individual candidate, an individual seat versus what may be the overall trend.
Right. I mean, and that's a good example of that because he is I think he might be one of the lone GOP elected officials in Cook County now. There might be one other on the Cook County board. But yeah, I mean, that's someone who he is extremely enthusiastic about reducing people's property taxes. He has a strong presence. His district covers all of the northwest and southwest suburbs. And he gets a lot of that crossover vote because he's not, this is not a stepping stone type position for him. He works very hard at trying to make the property tax system fairer for residents.
Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx can now, after successfully completing her reelection and because she posted such a dizzying record as a prosecutor, she can now set herself up for maybe a U.S. Senate run, maybe be appointed U.S. Attorney if Biden wins, something like that. I mean, it's time for her to go on to bigger and better things, don't you think?
I mean, the margin of victory in that race was a little bit breathtaking, just considering she has dealt with numerous scandals. I mean, very few politicians can survive the type of scandals that she has endured. And so what it says to me is just there is, people believe her criminal justice reform record is more important than what happens in bond court and some of the agreements that her prosecutors are making to release people on electronic monitoring who have violent criminal histories. Her last-minute advertisements against Pat O'Brien as it related to a prosecutorial misconduct case were extremely effective. I think it made people pull back a little bit who were willing to accept his candidacy. And again, he's a Republican, or at least he ran as one on the ballot. And it is just so hard in Cook County when you have an R next to your name to convince voters to give you a shot. So yes, Kim Foxx 4 more years, and her staying power was certainly shown with that very, very comfortable victory last night.
Did you listen to her acceptance speech or her victory speech last night?
Oh, it was Thatcherian.
It was like
it was wonderful.
theater.
Yeah,
I didn't know she was a thespian.
Very powerful.
Major, yes.
I did not listen to her acceptance speech.
You got to go back and look at that.
Go back.
We've
She's
memorialized
just like
it for
us.
you.
Her kids are e-learning too.
I'll send you an MP3, Kristen, so you can listen to it in the convenience and the comfort of your own home.
Just like us. Yeah.
Share it with those around you. It's very, very important speech. Sure it is. So this sets up for Chicago going forward, too. The Rona Busters there, Lori Lightfoot and Allison Arwady and the gals, along with JB and Ezike and those gals. The go forward is all lockdown all the time, bailout and tax increases. Do we see anything else in the offing at the city level or the state level from those erstwhile elected officials?
Well, you forgot property tax increases and more borrowing. So there's also that to look forward to. I don't know if you happened to catch the mayor last night. She had a finger in the face of a voter about the Judge Tooman race. Mm-hmm. So that was another small glimmer. Judge Tooman, getting a judicial retention unwound. The Democratic Party worked very hard at trying to do that. There were palm cards all over where I live saying, don't retain Judge Tooman, but he looks like he's going to be able to keep his seat, and the mayor was defending him. But in terms of the city, everything depends on what they can get from Congress in terms of these next few budgets. Otherwise, the city has already said it's prepared to and already heading to the bond market with more scoop and toss borrowing, which is basically paying off the bond payments that you owe with new borrowing from bond payments that you sell. So,
and Lori Lightfoot said, if we don't get help from Washington by March, or I think, I don't even know what month she said, then she's going to have to lay off 350 people. Well, even the private sector, people had to lay off employees because of COVID.
Excuse me.
This is some big sacrifice.
The private sector is the private sector. The public sector is sacrosanct. 350. Can the city still? Could the city still function if they lost like a tenth of 1% of their workforce, Kristen? I don't think so.
Well, and that is the percentage of the workforce, right. Sadly. So no, I think part of that goes back to a little bit of the rebellion with the Pritzker tax. You have all of these people in the private sector who they don't even have their unemployment checks yet from the first shutdown because of the way that state agency has operated. And so I do think you saw a little bit of rebellion there. And just to remind people of what an outlier we are as a state, Wisconsin recently, overseen by a Democratic governor, they have a rebate program in place because Even during a pandemic, they are well run, and they were able to rebate money to taxpayers. You had something on the ballot in Colorado where they are lowering their flat income tax because they realize they can do the same amount of services or more with less money. So voters are approving a reduction in their flat tax in Colorado.
That's not exactly right in Colorado. It's a minor reduction under 250, and then it's scaling up above 250. So that's not quite the same, really.
Well, I like my interpretation better, Dan.
Yeah,
okay,
you
fine.
stand up for yourself.
All right, I
Kristen.
just was pointing out something uncomfortable. I apologize.
My interpretation is they are getting to vote to reduce their flat tax.
Okay.
So we're just gonna leave it at that.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. No, this is everything's going
positive.
very well in Chicago.
It's going swimmingly.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Illinois, and more of the same. I say steady, stay the course, 1,000 points of light here in Chicago and Illinois. That's my takeaway. Is that about right, Kristen?
I actually, compared to past elections, like I said, I felt like there were a few glimmers of hope. We didn't really talk about Justice Kilbride, but that was obviously, that was a referendum on Madigan.
Yeah.
I have heard that there is some talk that in the interim, that they will now have an election for that seat in 2022, that there is talk of keeping Kilbride as the interim Supreme Court justice, and then possibly he runs again in 2022.
Sure.
Of course, why not? There you go.
No,
I know.
I
Well,
think
First you don't succeed, try and try
No,
again.
it's great.
Yeah.
It gives voters an opportunity to correct their mistake, and I think that's wonderful. That's very helpful. Sometimes the voters make a mistake. We're going to give them, the ruling class, give them an opportunity to go ahead and correct that before things have to get uncomfortable. Things have to get mean-spirited, and nobody wants that.
Well, right. And Cook County does it all the time, where a judge will lose in the primary, and then there'll be a vacancy in the fall, and they'll appoint the judge who voters just said, we don't like you, and they'll appoint that person to a new seat. So it wouldn't be unheard of. But again, I think the engagement of voters to unretain him would make it less likely that there could be monkey business with how he's replaced. But it is something that I'm hearing, so I'm just letting you know.
All right, very good. Kristen McQueary, Chicago Tribune editorial page editor. Thanks for joining us, Kristen. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Famous conservative quotes presented by Automated Systems.
You don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. Very wise words